In the south of India, on the Arabian Sea, there's a special place called Goa. It's India's smallest state, but one of the most beautiful. It is a land of jungles and vines that spill onto sandy beaches. And it's dotted with villages and towns made up of houses painted in bright oranges, pinks, greens and blues. Once it was ruled by Portugal, so you can see Portuguese-style balconies and windows in its architecture. The sea is always warm in Goa. It sits on the edge of the land, huge, greenish and calm. The waves are gentle and they lap the shore as softly as a lullaby. In the morning, when the sea is clearest, you can see hundreds of tiny silver fish swimming inside a wave just before it breaks and cascades onto the shore. And the shore itself is flat, sandy and expansive. The land sprawls out. In the evenings, when the sun spills pink light into the sky, it is reflected on the damp and rippled sand like a mirror. Beyond the beach, there are palm trees. Elegant coconut trees arc gracefully into the air. The round green fruits are perfect for eating on a hot, sunny day. You can buy one from the many coconut sellers. Watch them split it open in front of your eyes and hand it to you. Take a sip and you can taste the cool, sweet water inside. It hits your tongue with a strangely thick consistency and brings instant nourishment and hydration to your body. Here, the sand melts into the earth, which is a dusty reddish-orange color. It feels curiously soft to the touch and turns the soles of your feet red. Its earthy scent lingers in the air and joins the aroma of incense and coconut shells that the locals sometimes burn. This place is special in so many ways, but one of the best things about Goa is the hundreds of street dogs that roam all over from the jungle to the sea and through the villages in between. Some of them even live on the beach. Once in a little place at the top of Goa, there was a magnificent beach dog called Raju. During the daytime, he napped in the shade of a coconut tree, waking only to sniff hopefully at the passers-by who were eating snacks and treats as they walked. The delicious smells of fried snacks and milky chai would make him drool. If he wasn't under his tree, he would be in the chili fields that lay like patchwork behind the houses. The women working in the fields, dressed in brightly coloured clothing, would look up from their work to smile at him. That always made him feel good, so he would wag his tail happily. At night, he roamed the village just like all the other dogs. He would go sniffing and snuffling from door to door, patrolling the fields and the small dirt roads with that seriousness that all dogs have. Occasionally, a friendly neighbour might leave out some rice for him to gobble up. He would feel the cool grain squelching in his mouth. And of course, he could always run to the beach to dig at the soft sand and look for the night crabs. Then, when the sun came up, he would trot to the little temple on the beach and watch a man making his prayers. Raju didn't know what was being said, but he would always sit patiently waiting for him to finish. He knew the man would reward him with a pat on the head and a couple of biscuits. So all in all, Raju's life was not so different from the lives of the many other dogs on Goa's beaches. But there was something a little unusual about Raju. Instead of being small and brown like most of the other dogs, he was big and beige-coloured. He had longer legs and a shorter tail than the others. Instead of having a slim pointed muzzle, he had more of a square-shaped face. And instead of muddy brown eyes, he had clear blue ones. To put it simply, he was just different. The others didn't exactly dislike Raju. They just didn't run, play, eat, or sleep very much with him. They kept to their packs and did their own thing. So Raju was often alone. Sometimes tourists and people in the village would feel sorry for Raju, so they'd pet him, feed him some scraps, or play a game with him. Raju was happy to have them, and his outlook on life was to simply make the best of his situation. But still, he sometimes wondered what it would be like to have a real dog friend. One evening, when the sun was setting, something happened. Raju was sleeping under his coconut tree, which was unusual. When the sun set, most of the street dogs started to become very awake. But on this evening, Raju was napping. All the other dogs ran past him, ready to play, chase, and bark into the night. But Raju didn't hear them. He was dreaming. In the dream, he was running and running on a path of water towards something he couldn't quite see in the distance. It seemed like the closer he got, the further away it became. But he didn't mind. He was enjoying the run, and he knew that the thing in the distance was very good. Then suddenly the path of water stopped, and he saw a glittering, shining light. He was just about to sniff it when something called to him very clearly. Raju woke up with a start. He was still under the coconut tree, but it was already nighttime. The stars above were shining bright. He looked around for whatever had called him from the dream, but he couldn't see anything. Then he realized that he had the strangest feeling right in the center of his chest. It was like a magnet was pulling at it. Raju sniffed the air curiously. It didn't smell any different from any other night. He pawed at the ground. It didn't feel any different either, but still the feeling in his chest was there. Raju stretched out his long legs, gave a great yawn, and stood up. He started to walk, and he found that as he walked, the feeling in his chest seemed to guide him a bit like a compass. It was pointing him in the right direction. When he turned one way, it would feel stronger or weaker. He didn't know why, but he knew he had to keep following the feeling. So Raju padded along the hard mud ground of the village. He followed the feeling through the chili fields, over the banyan tree roots, and along the concrete road. He paused at the crossroads where the motorbike riders always stopped to buy fuel. But the feeling kept pulling. So he trotted on. He turned up the dirt road and bound it out onto the beach path. Then he reached the flat sand, went past the little temple, and walked towards the coconut trees that lined the beach. He could hear the sound of the sea, which was gentle and smooth tonight, and he could smell the salt in the air. When he reached a line of coconut trees, he stopped. He looked out at the beach below. It was a very low tide, so the sea was far away. There were huge puddles of sea otter on the flat, wet sand. They were so still that they perfectly reflected the stars in the sky. Raju stood looking at this magnificent view, taking it all in. He could still see the ripples in the sand that the waves had made, and pieces of seaweed or shells that had been left by the tide like sequins in a sari. Then his eyes rested on a small hump of sand. It rose up out of the puddles of water like an island. Standing there was a dog, but it was a dog unlike anything that Raju had seen. It was medium-sized with slightly shaggy fur, and the fur was the colour of a night sky just before dawn, a deep blue. At the same time, it seemed to glow and shimmer. Raju's heart leaped. This was what had been drawing him like a magnet. He bounded away from the coconut trees out onto the beach and towards the dog. As he got closer, he realized it was a female dog. She had beautiful blue eyes and a pearly white patch of fur over one eye. Raju's tail wagged, and when she saw him, her tail wagged too. They greeted each other as if they had known each other their whole lives. She told him that her name was Ronnie and that she had come from the stars. Raju jumped happily. He licked her ears and wagged his tail. But Ronnie seemed sad. She told him that she wanted to be a real dog, and that was why she had come to Earth. But she didn't know how. She sniffed sadly at her paws. But Raju had an idea. He told her he would show her how to be a real dog. Ronnie's ears perked up and her eyes shone with excitement. But before she could even ask a question, Raju was bounding over the beach, ready to show her everything. First, he took her to the village where they sniffed around the houses for scraps of food. He also showed her how to mark her territory and how to smell another dog's territory. Then they went to the grassy fields to chase beetles and crickets. Ronnie snapped at them happily with her shimmering jaws. The two dogs barked at the moon and chased their tails. They dug at the roots of the banyan tree and stole a pair of shoes from outside the house. And they had so much fun. Ronnie was so happy to be like a real dog, and Raju finally had a friend to play with. But then the sky began to change. As the sun got ready to shine on a new day, the stars began to flicker and fade, and so did Ronnie. Her paws seemed less defined, and her fur became faint. She looked at Raju sadly. She was fading back into the night. But Raju had an idea. Together they ran to the great coconut tree that stood alone at the end of the beach. It was the home of a special spirit. On its trunk were smears of red paint and tied strings of yellow to honor the spirit. Raju stood in front of the tree and howled, asking the spirit for help. Then a silvery mist trickled out of the tree like the smoke from a candle. Raju sniffed, and when he smelled the mist, he understood. In order for Ronnie to stay, she had to lie on the earth. So Raju led her to a patch of sand near the trees where the tide never reaches. And he started to dig. He dug and he dug, and Ronnie dug too, until they had a hole that was just big enough to sleep in. Ronnie made herself comfortable in the hole and lay her head on her paws, which were so pale that they blended in with the ground. Then Raju covered her over with the freshly dug sand until she was nothing more than a hump on the beach. And then he lay down beside her, put his head on his paws, and waited. For 3 days and 3 nights, Raju lay next to Ronnie, wishing for her dream to come true. Then on the 4th night, as Raju let out a big sigh, the hump of sand started to move. Raju's ears pricked up. He stood and sniffed excitedly at the hump. Slowly, the sand started to fall away and a beautiful tail emerged. It was Ronnie's tail, but it was no longer the color of night. Now it was beige with brown spots. More and more sand fell away until eventually Ronnie emerged as a real dog. Her coat was still shaggy, but just like her tail, it was a patchwork of beige and brown. Her eyes gleamed still bright and blue, and the white patch was still there. She looked up at Raju happily and licked his face. He wagged his tail and pawed at the ground. Then she jumped for joy, and he did too. And they ran and ran along the beach, chasing and barking and playing together. They played all the way through the night and scavenged for food. And when the morning came, they walked together to Raju's coconut tree, where he made a space for her. They settled themselves down next to each other and stretched out their legs. As they rested by the coconut tree, they looked at each other sleepily. Although they were tired, their tails were still wagging. Ronnie felt so safe and happy lying on the ground with Raju. Her heart seemed to glow with gratitude for him. And some of it must have been reflected in her eyes, because when she looked at him, he softly licked her nose. Raju's heart was happy too. He could feel it beating steadily in his chest. He gave special thanks to the spirit for helping him bring Ronnie back down to earth. Now their legs seemed to feel heavier and heavier. They could feel each muscle relaxing and softening into the ground. Ronnie's eyelids closed and her breathing became slow and soft. She lay her head on Raju's front paws and sighed. Raju found that his own eyes were heavy. He let them close and lowered his head to lie next to Ronnie. Softly, he gave her muzzle one last lick before slowly resting his head. So there they lay in each other's paws, happy and content to have finally found each other. Just as softly as a cloud passes over the moon, they slipped into a well-deserved sleep. And together they dreamed of sunsets and coconuts and the many wonderful days ahead of them here on the beaches of Goa.